Hi, everyone. My name is John Schwartz, and I am founder of Partner in Aging. We are a resource aging-related company here in San Diego County and have serviced other parts of Southern California as well. The purpose of today's conversation is to discuss a variety of options as it relates to aging well. And these topics are something that we are incredibly passionate about. What we've found is that a lot of folks that get into a situation of what do I want to do in terms of do I need to hire a caregiver in my house or possibly consider moving to a retirement community, are often at a loss as to just basic information. So the purpose of today's presentation is just to highlight some of the resources that exist for individuals. So here we go. So today's agenda, again, AARP had a study recently over the past couple of years showing that 90+% of people 65 and up wished to age in place at home. Very few people want to leave their house. However, is this idea of aging in place, is that possible? Is that feasible? What are the costs of aging at home? And then in addition, we'll talk about retirement communities. What does it look like to live in a retirement community? And what are the costs of moving? Lastly, is there anything covered by insurance? We get this question all the time and happy to answer that. So on to the presentation. Talking about care, I think Rosalynn Carter, the former First Lady, really hit it spot on. This is something that we should all, as people and as a society, be thinking about. There are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And with this in mind, in my experience, it has always been difficult to find good quality care. And during this past couple of years, at least here in Southern California, it's become even that much more difficult as we navigate through this COVID pandemic. Most caregiving in America is carried out by an unpaid family member. But at the same time, of course, we know it's not always possible for family members to provide care, whether someone's from a proximity standpoint, living far away, not physically capable of providing heavy lifting or transferring. And a lot of older adults don't have family members or children that live nearby. So if you or one in your network or a loved one needs caregiving, the first option that many people turn to, if it's not a family member, is a caregiving agency. The first bullet point I put up here, home health versus home care. I wish the industry did not have such confusing terminology here. Home health is professional, licensed, usually RNs or physical therapists, to go into someone's home, not long-term, very short-term, and this is paid by Medicare, but to provide some physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, addressing a wound that's needed by, let's say, an RN. But that nurse or therapist comes in for an hour at a period, maybe a couple times a week, but they're not really there to address the basic activities of daily life. And home caregivers, that is the industry that's there to help with activities of daily life, such as bathing, dressing, meal preparation, medication management. And so many folks opt to go through a home care agency when selecting in-home care. In San Diego County right now, what I found is that the average cost of home care agencies is about $33 to $40 per hour. A positive of going through a home care agency would be that the caregivers have been background screened by that agency. So FBI, Department of Justice, at least at the time of the screening, the caregiver checks out. Part of the caregiving agency is insurance is provided. So you can be assured if the caregiver got injured on the job that the home care agency has their own workers' compensation policy. Caregivers are bonded and licensed, and so there's quite limited liability from the client or older adult standpoint. Caregiving agencies like to talk about how they have backup caregivers if that is needed. What I found is that's a little bit more difficult to find in a pinch, but agencies typically do have a pretty large pool of caregivers to tap into. The con is that caregiving agencies, as we see $33, $35, almost $40 an hour, that can really add up pretty quickly, especially if someone needs a lot of hours of care throughout the day. And so think about having 24-hour care 30 days a month. That is almost $20,000+ a month. That's incredibly expensive. Caregiving agencies also have hourly minimums. And what I'm finding is even a 4-hour minimum for these agencies is very difficult to staff. They have hourly minimums of 4 hours, 6 hours, sometimes even 8-hour minimums. The other downside is there's really no chance to meet and interview the caregiver before that caregiver who comes from an agency before they start. And I've always found this to be a little bit awkward because providing care to an older adult, that's one of the most vulnerable things that someone can go through. And so you have a total stranger knock on your door, and a few minutes later, that person might be helping in the shower, getting dressed. Sometimes takes a little bit longer in that transition period to get that comfort level between client and caregiver. And then another downside is the caregiver only makes 50% or less than 50% of that hourly rate. Agency caregivers are making $16 to $18 an hour here in San Diego, and the agency is able to take the rest. And that often leaves caregivers with next to a minimum wage salary. And we know in San Diego that is really difficult to live on. So caregivers often need to work multiple jobs and might provide less than stellar care because they could be a little bit tired. What we do a lot of is help connect individuals to private caregivers. There are, in my opinion, many positives or pros of going through a private caregiver. This is a caregiver who does not work for an agency, rather they work for themselves. The private caregivers are often less expensive. I would say what I've found is around $25 to $30 per hour. Private caregivers are more flexible in their job tasks. So a caregiver who comes from an agency cannot do certain things. They're regulated by their company, and in general, the caregiving industry can't provide eye drops or actually physically help administer any medications. But a private caregiver could certainly do anything that the family and the caregiver are comfortable with. In the private caregiving realm, there are no minimum shifts, meaning 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. It depends on whatever the caregiver is comfortable in providing in the family member. So we've seen 12-hour shifts, 1-hour shifts, live-in shifts. So something that you can't get that flexibility with caregiving agencies. You absolutely have the chance to interview and do your own reference checks if you hire a private caregiver. And so I always found that to be really helpful. And private caregivers, in my experience, often tend to be of higher quality care. They tend to be more reliable. You, as the person hiring the caregiver, you are more likely to get that same caregiver to come, and you can build a nice rapport. These private duty caregivers are working for themselves, so their reputation is really on the line. So that's one other area of where I see higher quality. Plus, that caregiver gets to realize all of their wage. So they're making significantly more than that caregiver who works for an agency. There's certainly some cons, though. There's no insurance or background check unless you, the the senior family that are issuing that, which is certainly possible, but that would be on your own time. It certainly can be a challenge for last minute call-offs. If a caregiver that's private calls last minute, you'll probably want to have a second or third backup option in the terms of private caregivers in case of that call-off. It's a bit more complex to have to get long-term care companies to reimburse. That's one issue, although I've seen many long-term care carriers are totally comfortable in reimbursing to private caregivers. Right. And then one other area, a couple other areas are that workers' compensation is something that you as a hiree would want to, or someone that's hiring a private duty caregiver would want to look into. Most homeowners insurances provide some workers' compensation coverage, or you can purchase an additional workers' compensation rider, and it's not all that expensive, which would fully protect you in case there is an injury. The other con that it just didn't fit on my slides is that once you hire a private caregiver, you become the employer. And so there is some risk in doing so in terms of that caregiver becomes your employee. Will you pay that caregiver under the table, which is how most caregivers prefer to get paid? Will you put them on payroll or issue a 1099? So there's some complexity around how to pay. And I would be happy to provide some insider guidance, whatever way you'd like to go. I found this slide to be really important. In the world of caregiving, what we're seeing is there truly are, even today, a shortage of caregivers. It is really difficult to find good quality care. And we know the demographics of older adults are just absolutely surging to a point where I believe in the coming years, we are going to have a tremendous caregiving shortage. Luckily, I think technology will be able to solve some or much of the concern as it relates to a caregiving shortage. And I want to play a video of this robot caregiver called the Labrador and what that might look like.
4 years ago, we began working on a new type of personal robot. We designed it to physically assist people in their daily lives, especially where pain or other health conditions impact their activities. Our mission is to empower individuals to live more independently and to do more of what they want to do.
I feel very strongly about living independently and living on my own. I have 3 children who all invite me to be part of their lives, but I don't want to be dependent on them. And so anything that I can find that will help me do that is really, really valuable to my quality of life. It's my aide, it's my assistant. That's like a third hand for me. In my mind, I'm still 23, but my body isn't. And the robot lightens the load for me and allows me the time and the energy to do the things that are really still very important for me to explore. I still have a lot to do.
Alexa, ask Lab 1 to come to the dining room.
Okay, going to the dining room now.
Using a Labrador provides me a lot of independence, whether it's setting the table or getting the laundry into the washing machine. I'm not lifting anything, I'm not having to bend over, I'm not at risk of falling. It's providing me with the ability to do tasks that normally I would have to ask for help with. It's like having a second person in the house. It helps that much.
Some of the abilities that I lost following my stroke was the use of my right side. I've never realized how much I couldn't do anymore. But with the retriever, when it was introduced to me, it was like regaining that whole right side again. because it was able to carry and move things for me that I unable to do at this point. It's giving me that confidence level to where with the retriever, that's my right hand buddy. You know, it's something that I look forward to and that I could say, hey, you know what, let's go on with life. Like it doesn't stop here. It continues.
Doing the groceries is what you should be doing anyway. You don't miss bringing in the groceries, you know, things like that until you can't do it anymore. And to not have to ask for help, to be able to do it myself, not struggle with trying to lift a bag or put it on my lap and roll into the kitchen one at a time. I could get these things done. The independence and the freedom and just the self-worth of doing it, not having to feel that, you know, you're somebody's burden. The robot gave all that back.
I just find this so neat. And I think in the coming years, we're going to see some incredible technologies to help keep people safe and at home in terms of robotics and just so many other smart sensors and technologies. We could go on forever with this. Maybe it's a future video. But with that being said, that's kind of the aging in place model. Now we'll look at retirement communities.
4 years ago.
And here's another video that I have for you that talks about the perception of retirement communities. And this was a scene from the movie in the 1990s, Happy Gilmore. And sadly, this is what I think many people still view as what a retirement community, in a sense, could be.
Just stay here and have some fun.
I will, dear. Don't worry.
Oh, pardon me, but it's nap time.
All right, nap, that sounds nice.
You go on.
I love you.
I love you too, darling.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye.
Hey, buddy, I want you to do me a favor. You see that lady? She's very important to me, okay? So I want you to take extra special care of her. You know what I'm talking about, Ed? I can't accept that. But I'll tell you what I can do. I can take extra special care of that young lady over there for nothing. And I appreciate that. Have a nice afternoon.
Sir, could I trouble you for a glass of warm milk? It helps put me to sleep.
You could trouble me for a warm glass of shut the hell up. Now you will go to sleep, or I will put you to sleep. Check out the name tag. You're in my world now, Grandma.
Oh, dear.
Stop yapping your trap for a second. I can tell you. The price is $200 per quilt. Yeah, well, this is handmade quality shit we're talking here. Yes, well, when do you need them by? All right. Good doing business with you. Okay, listen up, everybody. Turn up your volumes. Announcement. I got good news. We're extending arts and crafts time by 4 hours today.
My fingers hurt.
What's that?
My fingers hurt.
Oh, well, now your back's gonna hurt because you just pulled landscaping duty. Anybody else's fingers hurt? I didn't think so.
I'm so glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you too, Grandma. I've been thinking about you all the time. Looks like everybody's having fun here, huh?
The professional golfers tour.
That's lovely, dear.
Yeah, it is lovely.
So that was pretty much the essence of the video. What very sad, but that, in my experience, is not the reality of many of these retirement communities. These tend to be very nice places, but they can be a little bit complicated in their structure. And so I'll go over definitely the ins and outs of what all of these places look like. There are some communities that are what are called continuing care retirement communities, where I put on the first bullet point, buy-in communities. Buy-in communities typically have a significant down payment. So here in San Diego County, these down payments can be 200,000+ all the way up to $1 million, $2 million+ dollars. It's pretty remarkable. These continuing care retirement communities come with no ownership. But so you ask, why might someone opt to move into one of these communities? The continuing care model tends to be pretty high-end and luxurious. That's number one. Two is it serves as a cost mitigator. So there is, in addition to that $200,000, $300,000, $800,000, million plus dollar buy-in fee, there is also a monthly rental cost. And you got to move in, you have to move in as an independent living person to take advantage of this model. So that monthly rental cost, one of the facets of that down payment is that it serves as a cost mitigator as more care might be needed. So someone moves in as an independent person, let's say, and is paying about $6,000 a month, but all of a sudden that person has an assisted living need or a cognition need where they need to move to the assisted living wing or the dementia wing of the community. Their monthly rate does not skyrocket and balloon like it would in a standard retirement community. So it serves as somewhat of a long-term care insurance plan for people that they know that their monthly rates won't explode. These continuing care retirement communities, they do offer, there's no ownership that's included. Often it's a significant portion to almost all of that initial buy-in fee is not reimbursed when that person ends up moving out. But usually a small portion is and can be reimbursed. These are interesting models. People that live there tend to be pretty happy. One of the downsides that I also see in that is when the community tells you, okay, you need assisted care, okay, you need memory care, you really don't have a choice, and you have to go because financially they have such leverage over that resident. The most standard type of retirement communities come from the model that's a month-to-month 30-day rental. And like I mentioned, these are the most common. There's often a very small community fee compared to that buy-in or CCRC model, which comes, I don't know, $1,000, $3,000, $5,000 as a one-time community fee. And the benefit here is you're really not locked in. You can leave at any moment. If you're not happy, if you need more care, if just any reason, you can leave with a 30-day notice and you're generally not locked in or financially committed. So we often hear of all these different options as it relates to retirement communities: independent living, assisted living, memory care. So I'll kind of go over what each one means. Independent living is typically for folks who are able to care for themselves from an activity of daily life standpoint. Maybe someone wants more social opportunities and structured activities. Maybe someone is sick of managing their own home and all the maintenance that goes into that. Maybe one is no longer driving, so they could take advantage of the community transportation that's offered. But independent living is for folks who do not need any care. But what's included in this monthly rate, which ranges from what I've seen around $2,500 to about $10,000 plus here in the county, 2 or 3 meals a day are included, all the activities, transportation, utilities are often included. And so the monthly rent may seem high compared to living at home, but when you factor in all that is included, they tend to be decent bargains and deals. And then you get all the social opportunities and the food and the dining, as I mentioned. Assisted living communities range from about $4,500 to $10,000 a month. And typically assisted living are for folks who need some form of care. I need help in the shower, getting dressed, managing my medications. Typically, there's not a significant cognitive impairment for folks who live in assisted living. And assisted living communities do a pretty good job of being able to keep people in the assisted living where they don't need a higher level of care. When what I'm thinking of would be a nursing home. Assisted living community, the cost includes the transportation, still includes all the activities and food and utilities. Memory care communities are for folks who have a diagnosis of dementia. Typically, there are included in memory care communities. The difference between them and assisted living communities are there's usually a better care ratio, more caregivers to residents than there are in assisted living. And then there's often a secure area. So for folks with dementia or Alzheimer's, there would be an alarm if someone were to wander off campus. Memory care communities range from about $5,000 a month to $12,000 plus per month. And these communities tend to provide a lot of relief and stimulation for folks with dementia. I often get asked about nursing homes. Nursing homes are for folks typically who have had a fall and maybe broke their hip, and post-surgery at the hospital, they recover for a few weeks to a month or two in a nursing home setting, knee replacement or just getting over some illness that needs short-term rehabilitation. Medicare does cover this option, whereas in independent living, assisted living, memory care, Medicare does not cover any of it. Medicare does cover nursing homes, but insurance at a maximum would only cover about 100 days, 20 days on Medicare, and then usually private insurance would cover the remaining 80 days. In my experience, most people do not end up staying in a nursing home for 100 days. It's usually very short term, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a month. And that person living in a nursing home, for Medicare to continue paying, must justify that the therapy that they're getting, the physical therapy or occupational therapy, speech therapy, that they're showing some improvement. If that person plateaus in the nursing home will say, there's no more coverage or there's no more benefit for that person to stay there anymore. And that person could certainly pay privately on a daily basis, but those costs are pretty expensive. So for most folks who have plateaued in their progress, they either go home with caregivers or move to an assisted living community. And the last piece, the last bullet point here, is a boarding care home. And boarding care homes are just a home in a residential neighborhood that have been converted to an assisted living home. And I'm a big fan of these for the right person. There's a maximum of 6 residents that live in these boarding care homes. And so these homes are great for people who maybe stimulation and activities are less important, but they need a lot of care and attention from caregivers. And so these can be great options for people who need a lot of care and aren't able to spend a tremendous amount of money. I found a lot of great boarding cares here in the county. So we talked about what's included, what's not included. So what's included is care, but obviously not for independent living, but any form of care by a caregiver is included: food, cable, and internet, all utilities, transportation, daily activities, and then usually weekly housekeeping. So the pros and cons of retirement communities. One of the pros is a myth. The myth is that it's more expensive to live in a retirement community than it is for me to age in place at home. And that's often not the case. And I put it up here on the first bullet point: scaled care. And if you were to get caregiving at home, you have a caregiver one-on-one, whether it's a private caregiver at $25 an hour or it's an agency caregiver at $35 or $40 an hour. That care can be really expensive. And what retirement communities do a good job at is scaling the care. So you might have 10 residents for one caregiver, but the cost goes down pretty dramatically because of that. Communities manage all aspects of care and well-being. You don't have to worry about, are my medications filled? You don't have to worry about, is the gardener late? Community manages all of that. Once the transition takes place, people in my experience, tend to be happier. People often, I hear say, I wish I moved in earlier. I truly don't believe I've ever heard a single person ever say I moved in too early. And one of the benefits, I think, of being at a retirement community is care is unpredictable. It is unpredictable to know exactly when we need care. And at a retirement community, there are caregivers in the halls, awake, there for you 24 hours a day. And at home, I often hear people say, well, I think I just need a couple hours in the morning and then the rest of the day I'm good. what happens when that caregiver leaves for the day and an hour later or 2 hours later, there is some incident or fall and you need something, that caregiver is just not there anymore. One of the other benefits I indicated here is privacy is maintained. So if someone, let's say, lives in a retirement community and needs to go to the bathroom, that person would press a button, the caregiver would come in and help, and then they would leave once their task is done. Whereas a caregiver who is at someone's individual home, that caregiver is just kind of there lingering all day long. And so I often hear complaints of people say, I want more privacy. And retirement communities offer that for their residents. So some of the negatives are there's definitely a transition period. In my experience, it takes around 30 to 60 days for it to start really feeling like, okay, this is my new home. And it really is not the same as one's home. Home comes with a tremendous amount of emotions and memories, and it's incredibly hard to duplicate that in a retirement community. There's certainly a more regimented schedule. Usually there's times for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, activities, and have certain times. All communities have their own individual rules that can be at times frustrating to navigate for people. So there is more autonomy, there's more flexibility in one's own home. And one of the things that retirement communities aren't, it's not one-on-one care like one would get at home. And so there are times where residents need to wait to get cared on because that caregiver might be next door caring for someone else. So just being patient, especially when there's a need, can be a challenge at times. I want to talk about what's the insurance that's covered. Unfortunately, today, there's really not much coverage. Medicare, the only thing Medicare will cover is nursing home stays. If you're one of the 5 to 10% of people that took out a long-term care insurance plan, that's wonderful. Often long-term care insurance can cover caregivers coming into the home, as well as they often cover the rents of assisted living communities. And the people that have long-term care are great beneficiaries and are usually very happy they took out their policy. But for the 90 to 95% of folks that don't have a long-term care policy, all of this stuff is private pay. There is a program called VA Aid and Attendance for veterans, but that is income and means tested. And so often folks don't qualify because they have too much in savings. But if you have any questions on, do I qualify? Does my spouse qualify for any VA Aid and Attendance? I'd be happy to discuss that with you. And then for folks who are low income, have less than $2,000 of assets, they can qualify for state medical coverage called Medi-Cal here in California. And I put in parentheses IHSS, which is in-home supportive services. You can have caregivers come to the home, and it's a county paid caregiving program. And then there's also programs for folks on Medi-Cal to go into nursing homes as well as assisted living communities. But the options are quite limited for folks that are on Medi-Cal. My company, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is called Partner in Aging, and we help in a variety of different ways. We help families, number one, connect to outstanding independent caregivers, as well as personal assistants. In terms of independent caregivers, again, these are independent from our company, but they are within our network. And so often we'll get calls from families saying, help, I need X, Y, or Z, and then we can get that right fit, recommend that certain caregiver to a family, and that family can interview. And if for some reason the caregiver needs more hours or is unavailable one day, we often can find additional support. And then in addition, as I mentioned, we have personal assistants. What I found is that many older adults, they don't need help in the shower or help getting dressed. They more so need an assistant to help coordinate their doctor's appointments or provide transportation or make sure they have the right groceries. And so, or help paying bills and computer work, organization help. And this works the exact same way as our independent caregivers. We help people find the right retirement community. So for folks that are interested or considering moving to a retirement community, we truly know all of the communities in San Diego County and majority in Southern California. The large continuing care retirement community down to the month-to-month rental, and then as well as the boarding care homes. We can assist in a downsize. We own a sister company called Senior Move Masters, which can help an older adult pack up their home, move, and then unpack in their new, typically a retirement community. And I'm such a big advocate of this service. I think it's one of the biggest obstacles of an older adult not leaving their home as they look around their house and think, oh my God, I'm 80 years old, I'm 90 years old. How am I possibly physically going to pack up my home, decide what to take with me? It is so overwhelming to move down to a 1-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom apartment. You know what? This is just too much. I'm going to stay here. And our move management company can really do a great job in helping individuals make this such a manageable process. We also provide real estate help. We only work with folks that are typically 55 and up in their purchasing or their sale. And we have several agents that specialize in the senior real estate world. When someone chooses to list their home with our brokerage, we offer substantial discounts to 100% pay all of the move related costs and the packing, the moving, the unpacking. So we really try and make our company a one-stop shop for folks and offer nice discounts along the way. And then lastly, we provide connections to other age-related resources. There's no question, I often say, navigating the maze of aging is very, very difficult without the proper social worker, without the proper guidance, and we can help provide you connections and resources to make this process more manageable. Some commonly asked questions that we get, how do I know when it's time to make a move? I often say, if you feel like you become a prisoner of your own home, if you're no longer driving, if you feel lonely, if a spouse might have some dementia and it's difficult to manage there. Financially, if you're feeling like you're in a place where, oh my gosh, and this real estate market is incredibly high, maybe you want to take advantage of the high real estate prices right now and sell your home. Financially, having caregivers in and out of your house on a daily basis may be cumbersome or too expensive, and therefore you can move down to a retirement community. I often hear moving is very hard. Is there someone to assist with the downsize? Yes, that's our company, this model, Senior Move Management. Our company is called Senior Move Masters. And I highly recommend them to everyone, truly everyone that's thinking about moving. I don't need a caregiver. Rather, I'd like a personal assistant to help me age in place. Where do I go about finding one? So I think having some form of an assistant can help people age in place. Navigating from a technology standpoint, navigating this world and how quickly things are changing can be difficult, especially if maybe our eyesight or our hearing or our capacity with technology is not as good. Having some form of an assistant can really help manage one's home if that person really truly wants to age in place. We also know that the family caregiving role, the family assistant role, is often not possible. We have a shortage of adult children that are able to help their aging parents, not from a caregiving standpoint, but just from a home management standpoint. And so these assistants can somewhat act like or serve as an adult child that lives in the area. And we can absolutely help find someone terrific for people. So that's the presentation. Here's my contact information, my phone number, my email address, the website, and I hope you learned something here and look forward to being in touch. Bye-bye.